I am a leader.
I'm a strong player.
I am brave.
I am smart.
I'm confident.
I am fast.
I am strong.
I am a confident Jordanian woman.
Jordan's feminist movement has evolved through decades of political shifts, regional conflicts, and persistent activism, with women continuously challenging systematic barriers in education, politics, and legal rights. Despite repression and setbacks, their resilience has paved the way for legal reforms, political representation, and ongoing efforts towards gender equality. From the 1940s to the 1990s, women fought for rights in education, social work, and politics, despite strong resistance from conservative and state forces. In the 1940s, educated women were permitted the right to vote, allowing representation in the political sphere, but only elite women like Queen Musbah had power to organize and also help write Jordan's 1952 constitution. Middle and upper-class women also used regional activism, pushing for legal reforms in personal status law, pushing for maternity leave, and addressing discrimination in media. However, Jordan remained deeply conservative and male-chauvinistic, limiting public discussions on women's rights. The 1950s saw increased activism aimed towards broader women's participation in election, as voting restrictions for the uneducated was not applied to men. The Jordanian Communist Party and figures like Emily Bisharat advocated for broader women's political rights, but the Jordanian government subjugated the JCP to forced labor, and after a failed coup in 1957, King Hussein imposed martial law, banning political groups and forcing women's activism underground. Thus, political fear dominated the 60s, stalling progress. Women shifted toward non-political charity work to avoid persecution. However, the 70s marked a turning point. Due to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, women gained roles in humanitarian efforts and nursing roles. Women's organizations also aimed for higher education and participation in the labor market. International pressures also led King Hussein to grant all women voting rights and the right to run for office in 1974, exhibiting political shifts occurring for international appearances. Meanwhile, the Muslim Brotherhood gained power, indoctrinating traditional gender roles in the masses to push back against feminist efforts. The 1980s saw both progress and setbacks. The General Federation of Jordanian Women unified feminist efforts, pushing for legal and economic reforms. Women finally voted in 1984, a decade after gaining the right, but tribalism and political barriers limited their success. The Muslim Brotherhood, in its golden age, spread religious rhetoric discouraging women from running for office. However, scholars also began addressing once taboo topics like domestic violence, signaling a shift in societal discourse. By the 1990s, feminism gained legal ground within the National Charter recognizing gender equality. A 1933 election law curbed the Brotherhood's influence, promoting women in government. However, honor killings surged, redirecting feminist efforts towards legal protections against gender-based violence and women's awareness of their legal rights. Building upon educated women's voting rights, Jordanian women built organizations, pushed legal reforms, and expanded their roles in politics, education, and the workforce, laying the foundation for current movements. Education and its effects for girls in Jordan was influenced through different phases of the country's establishment, linked to politics of the kingdom and ideological agendas of cabinet ministers that ran the education ministry. Access to education for women expanded across the 1920s since Jordan's creation. Although the number of schools for girls and boys were different, the differences in these opportunities for men and women remained with the country's lack of funding into educational institutions rather than active gender suppression. In fact, the government openly encouraged and later incentivized women's education. For example, the 1950s marked a political push towards women's education with the rise of the Jordan Communist Party, aligning with the feminist movement of the 1940s. The government established laws allowing educated women the right to vote. This, along with the feminist movement's awareness programs for women's enrollment in schools, continued to push for women's political participation. However, traditional attitudes, early marriage, and lack of schooling facilities still hindered many girls, particularly in rural areas.
Women who got these, MBAs or degrees and stayed home with their children were wasting their education. And so this is a debate we're having here. Many women there are having that debate as well. Like, how do I be a good mother and take care of my family, but also pursue these other professional, or maybe I don't care about the professional, or maybe I do. There are a whole range of things.
Compared to diverse urban environments where centralized government control allowed for greater feminine rights in social and political life through compulsory education, lack of infrastructure from lack of funding extended to rural areas. The 1970s marked another pivotal shift, however, one not in favor of women's empowerment. The Jordanian government, in a political bargain to maintain power, handed control of the Ministry of Education to the Muslim Brotherhood. This led to a drastic change in women's roles within education and society, and implications of the feminist movement. Up to this point, the movement had actually worked with the government through shared increases in vocational opportunities, especially with the rise of labor market needs as their main export became labor in the form of both education or educated men and women. Beyond this point, instead, schools introduced gender-segregated curricula, now limiting women to domestic skills. Their presence in school textbooks diminished, and their political aspirations stifled. The education system, being fully entrenched in radical Islamist ideology, systematically reshaped the perception of women. It switched indoctrination of women's role in society to that of their initial perceptions within rural areas. The feminist movement in Jordan, which once supported the government's initiatives to active female assimilation, instead fought against the Islamic rising regime, which held tightly onto the legal codes of Sharia law seen in rural areas.
In the early 2000s, activism in Jordan intensified, pushing for women's rights and legal reforms. Decades of advocacy and strategic policy making paved the way for major breakthroughs. In March 2000, Queen Rania met with government leaders to lay the foundation for a National Committee on Family Safety. This led to the creation of National Council for Family Affairs in 2001, ensuring protections for Jordanian families and reforming laws affecting women. A UK-funded 5-year project trained law enforcement in handling domestic violence cases, leading to exposure of hidden abuse and honor-related murders disguised as accidents. That same year, activists successfully pushed for key amendments. Women gained the right to divorce without consent, the legal marriage age was raised to 18, and leniency for honor killings under Article 340 was challenged. By 2003, history was made. 3 female ministers joined the cabinet, a women's quota was established in parliament, and Jordan launched a national action plan to fight legal discrimination. Jordan's leadership expanded globally. In 2005, Queen Rania was named World Health Organization's patron for violence prevention and launched the Arab Women's Legal Network to elevate women in law. However, setbacks emerged. The Arab Spring in 2010 shifted focus in political priorities, and women's rights faced resistance as different ideologies were propagated by terrorist groups influencing beliefs and values. Yet, by 2015, new shelters and protections were brought back in discussion due to the constant and continued push for reforms by activists. Between 2017 and 2018, activists achieved groundbreaking victories, abolishing Article 308, which allowed rapists to avoid punishment by marrying their victims, and amending Article 98 to eliminate leniency in honor crimes.
To those who say that they are with this law, okay, I just ask them one simple question. Did you ever ask a woman who has been forced to live with her rapist? Did you see what sort of person he can become? You know, if he has a good family, will he be really a good father? I doubt it. They are killing this girl 1,000 times a day at least, okay? He took away her dignity, her honor, and he took away her life.
Jordan also took strides in sports, hosting the Women's U17 World Cup in 2016 and the Women's Asian Cup in 2018, proving that exclusion extends beyond politics. From legislative battles and cultural shifts, Jordanian women continue to shape their future. As Prince Ali put it, women make up half of society and they deserve a voice everywhere.
As the feminist movement in Jordan continues to progress, pushback is inevitable. In order to effectively communicate to their supporters, feminist organizations must leverage social media and strategic activism to further systemic change. Organizations must recognize the need for unity across both political and social spheres in order to achieve meaningful political and economic change.
The internet allows us to exchange ideas across boundaries of distance and culture.
With regards to social media, activists must mobilize their online presence to support gender equality. Organizations such as the Arab Women Organization, AWF, have utilized their social media platform to advocate for change. In December of 2024, the AWO held 3 initiatives to empower and teach 20 participants with assistance from the Women, Peace, and Security Agenda. This organization encourages the participation of women in peace and security initiatives. It is without a doubt that social media is a powerful tool. However, to truly combat the ingrained injustice, activism must demand legal and policy reform. These discriminatory policies must dismantle and call for a circular legal reform and progressive Sharia interpretation for Muslim nations. Political representation is crucial in combating systemic discrimination. Activists must learn and strategically increase women's involvement in legislation. These organizations must endorse fellow candidates and young Jordanian women from rural and urban areas. Educational reform must eliminate gender biases in curricula and improve teacher training to instill egalitarian values. Activists must employ legal and religious expertise to counter regressive discourse, justifying oppression and bringing Jordan's legal framework into alignment with international human rights standards. Jordan's women movement is not isolated from parallels within the broader Arab world. NGOs must coordinate across borders, drawing on the lessons of past United Nations conferences and regional advances. International networks render advocacy stronger and forge a unified push towards gender equality. Moving forward, Jordanian women have been fighting for rights since the 1970s through NGO mobilization, court cases, and political engagement. Nowadays, adding digital activism, legislative reform, and transnational collaboration is a necessity in achieving complete legal, political, and economic gender equality. The movement's success depends on unstoppable activism and total solidarity.
Overall, while Jordanian women have made significant strides in legal, political, and social spheres, the fight for gender equality persists, requiring strategic activism, digital mobilization, and transnational collaboration to dismantle systematic discrimination and achieving lasting change.